So I'm sharing my screen. Let me know once you all can see my screen.
It is visible.
Okay, so the recording is already started. I hope John will
Yes.
be posting the recording in the meetup group or maybe in some YouTube channel. So you'll be getting those recording there. So I really don't have any PPT. I really hate boring slides. Okay. So we'll talk about first of all. I think just wanted to know how many of you actually attended the previous sessions. Can you maybe raise your hand? If not, if you could just put yes or no or something. Then okay. I only see yes. Okay, then no, no, no. A lot of new people here. Okay, so okay, no worries. If you have not joined, that's fine. How many of you know that what happens if we wanted to, what we really do if we wanted to handle the errors from a flow? Let's say that we have a error. Sorry, we have a flow that is for creating a record. So what we do, like, what are the ways to handle the errors in Lightning flows? If you have ever worked with flow, if you have not worked, that's fine. But if you know, if you have attended the previous sessions, okay, Akshay says fault path, Praveen says fault path. Yes, that's correct, and that is true actually. So that's what actually that is where we are going to start. Arjun says we debug. We definitely debug, but fault path is the one which is the correct one here. So we are going to actually start from that portion itself, error handling. Okay, that is the I would say that is important part for any concept that you learn in Salesforce, be it Apex Trigger, be it Flow, it could be Lightning Web Component, or it could be Aura components, whatever you're learning. Okay, so let's talk about a very simple flow. And I am assuming that everyone is aware about how to create a flow, how to have your own Salesforce org. So I'll not go there. So I'm just going to create a very simple flow here. Okay, and that flow is actually going to be kind of having some sort of fault paths in the flow. So I'm going to have a screen flow that would be my favorite part. So I'll say this is my screen. So I'm going to say SO01. Let's say input screen. So I'm going to take some inputs here, like let's say I'm going to take name for contact record. Then I'm going to take email, phone, and title. For title, we have got text field. So these are some of the fields that actually I'm taking here. The reason I'm taking all these because I wanted to showcase you something. So as we have already covered, John has already covered these details in the previous sessions. I'm not going to cover what are all these field types and what all these are. And done. So consider like a scenario that you have a screen. You wanted to create a contact record or case record, maybe any object record you wanted to create. And before that, you maybe you have multiple screens from a flow, creating an account, creating a contact, creating an opportunity, then creating an opportunity contact role. And these are the four objects. Let me maybe draw it here. So what you do is you go as a user, you take the input, okay, take input from user, and then what you do is you say, okay, now I need to create a contact. So you go and use create records for creating a contact. Sorry, creating an account, and that's how it works. And then you say, okay, now let me take an input for creating a contact. Okay, and then you'll say, okay, now let's create a contact record in Salesforce. And you're saying create contact. Now you're taking an input for creating an opportunity in the same flow. Okay, create an opportunity. You say, okay, now you have this database operation where you wanted to use create records, where you will say create opportunity, and then later on you're going to use create opportunity contact role. Okay, it's just a simple scenario where you can have multi screens in your flow, and you just try to do the DML operations. Okay, now here is the key thing. You will definitely have to handle this fault path, right? So you'll say, okay, have a handle a fault path here. So you'll say if there is any error, that means no. You'll say error handling, right? And for every single object, the error handling is going to be different. When I say error handling is different, that means the error would be different, the titles, so every single thing will be different, right? Similarly, you're going to have an error handling here as well, right? This is one of the thing. And for opportunity, you're going to have an error handling. And then for opportunity contact role. Now, these are the four places where you are actually having an error handling, okay? And you're writing, maybe if you are creating an object of any record, you're writing create record 4 times, right? With just similar different information, but inserting the record of same object, right? So here we are talking about, say, these are all something creating, right? Let me now go back to the flow. This is for input screen for contact. Let me, before contact, I'm going to say so01 account input screen, where I'm just taking the account name. That is what is needed for creating an account. Let's say name it as name, and I'll make it required. Yeah. So this is my screen 01. This is my screen 02. Okay. And now between these two screens, we wanted to, whenever user clicks next on this screen, we wanted to create an account. And before that, I wanted to save my flow, and the flow is a screen flow. So I'll add a screen colon. I'll say create account with contact and opportunity. So that is my flow. Now here between these two screens, you wanted to create a record. So what you will do is you'll say, okay, use create records. And here you will say you wanted to create a record. So you'll say create account record. And then here you're creating, saying you how many records you have, one record. And you don't have a record variable, and you will use separate literal and values. So we are going to use that. And object is account. The field that you wanted to map is, that is account name, and whatever you have got from name. Now, the reason I'm having two screens, because I'm going to show you what is the use of auto launch flow, because that is what our session says. So we are going to have another screen here, sorry, another create record element, that is going to be create records 02, and I'll say create contact records. I'm just basically, you can consider these screens, these elements are nothing, these are just the basics, or we are getting ready to use auto launch flow. Again, I'm going to use contact, and let's say whatever the account ID that I've got from the previous create element, which is account ID. If you want, you can map the other fields like email, title, phone, first name and last name. That's what we have in the contact. Like email will come from the screen component email. Title is again going to come from screen component phone. Similarly for phone, and then first name and last name, right? So I'm hoping everyone is aware about all these concepts, and that's why I'm just rushing it so that we can focus on our things. Now there could be one more screen here. I'm just adding it. I'll not add anything here in the screen, but I'm just adding it here. Let's say opportunity input screen. And let me take just an input field which says opportunity name, nothing else. I'm not going to have anything, okay? It is opportunity name. and that's what the label will say. Okay, so these are all three screens that we have. Now, if there any error comes in this create record which says CR01, what will happen is you are going to say add a fault path here. Similarly, if there is any error comes here, you're going to say add a fault path here. And if you have one more create records that I'm going to add it here right now. So it is going to be CR03 create opportunity record and then say opportunity object. And I'm just going to add up account ID and name. This is definitely going to throw an error because there are multiple fields on opportunity which are required. So I've just taken all these three scenario for us, and all three create records element are going to have fault path. Okay, now there could be delete record, get record, or maybe update record, or you are trying to call an apex class, you're trying to send an email, anything you are trying to do. Every most of the actions actually have this fault path that you can use to handle the error over here, right? Now the question is, what happens, let's say that you have uh, an object, a custom object where you wanted to store the errors. Every time an error comes, you wanted to store that in a custom object. So what you will do is you'll say, okay, let me create a record here, create a record of a custom object. So you'll say whatever the element is CR04, and you will say create log error, log record, right? Now, as this is again a create record, what you will do, you're going to say add a fault path, right? Now, this is again going to fail. You have a fault path. If you don't add a fault path, unnecessary errors will be coming. Now again, what you have couple of options. You create a record again, you post to a chatter, or you send an email, or you just do simple like assignment kind of things, just to stop that, I would say, the fault hell, right? So let's say you are sending an email here. You say send email. There is something called send email, right? So if you say send email, this is C01. Okay. Body maybe fault. Okay, flow dot fault message that is required. Anything else? Oh, subject is also required. So test email, because I'm not going to use it, so that is fine. And now this is an action. This is again going to have an error. You're going to say fault path, right? And then let's say you are having something called here an assignment, so that doesn't the errors doesn't come. So you'll say assignment stop error path something, and then you have to maybe, let's say you say opportunity name equal to whatever error or something, or maybe the error message, because you're not using this at all anywhere. And then here your flow is going to stop, right? So this is again, I tried to make it complex a bit, because that is how the flow will look like when you will be working in real world. So this is just one part. This part of error handling is just one place. You have to repeat the same for the second one, and you have to repeat the same for the third one, right? For example, if I just go and copy element and paste it here, similarly, I just go and paste it here, right? And then again, I have to just add a fault path like this. So now you see here, what I'm doing is, why you are not, okay. What I'm doing here is, I'm kind of performing the same action with the different inputs, because the error that will come for create account record will be different. The message will be different. The fields will be different. So basically, the values are going to be different, but the actual thing that we are doing is same. We are kind of repeating the world with the different, repeating the steps with the different values. And that is where comes the concept of auto launch flows. You can also say subflows. And that is why I just made this whole thing, just to make you understand what is the problem in the normal flows and why you should start using auto launch flows or sub flows. Okay, so before I go ahead, any questions, anything that you have, please put here in the chat, or maybe if anyone wants to speak, John, please enable them and let them speak.
Okay,
I
sure.
would love to hear. Yeah. So anyone, any questions? Praveen has, can you tell us the best practices for flows? So Praveen, if I start talking about best practices, believe me, this session is going to be somewhere else. We will not having time to talk about auto launch flows. Maybe we'll talk about some other session. What are the best practices? But as of now, it's not good time to talk about those. I don't see any question. Am I really making sense? Because if no question, that means I'm not able to make you understand. Okay. I that when no one asks the questions, it's like either they understood everything or they don't understood anything. So I will assume the first one, that you understood everything because I'm a good teacher. Okay. So now let's talk about something that we have here in our Salesforce, which is already in place. Okay. So now this is something which is most of the companies, most of the project actually they might have like definitely the enterprise projects. Enterprise means the big projects already have the all these objects set up and they already are doing. So whenever you're working for a company or a project, there is a concept for error handling, which we when we start, we usually don't think about those. We think, okay, we will add debug logs in our code and we will debug it. Or if the flow fails, we will try to reproduce. We'll ask the steps from the user to reproduce and all those things. And yeah, we don't think about having a good logging mechanism. Logging doesn't Logging is not only about holding the error information, it's also about holding the holding the what we say other information. Like if you wanted to store some information which could be in case of success, which could be in case of error warning information, you can always hold that into the object and your business can refer later on. Your business can get the key matrices, they can get the analytics, and they can prepare what are their next steps in order to improve the quality of their product. So basically, I would not say error handling, I would say logging mechanism should be there. And that's what we are going to see in a very small scale. It's going to be just a little part of the complete logging mechanism. Okay. So Arjun has a question: Can we make direct all error handling to one fault path? You have to have multiple fault path, but you can connect one fault path to a different file path. You can always connect. Like if I have to show you, if I go ahead and remove this, I can connect this here. So anytime this particular thing is this error is coming, it's going to connect over here. But the problem could be that the message is not clear, or you're not able to get whatever the message, whatever the global variables and all those things is there, because this fault path is actually the fault path for this element. You might wanted to give it a try doing this. First of all, have a fault path here, then have another create record, connect this fault path, throw an error by intentionally. I would use contact object, not passing the last name, and it will throw an error, and then see what exactly happens. You can give it a try. That is the one thing that you could do. But this is just one scenario that I'm taking. It's not it's not something that you will always have to use subflows or autolaunch flows in case of this error handling only. But this is one of the concept that I'm taking. There are multiple questions that you need to ask to yourself and then start working on those. I'll tell you what are all those questions. So you will be getting the complete information when to use all these auto launch flows. We'll take your question later on, Akshay. So yeah, we were coming back to our error handling part. So what I have done is I have actually created a custom object called error log, which is especially for flow. Okay. So this custom object is error log, which is kind of responsible for storing any error when comes in the flow, right? So there are few fields, not few, there are multiple fields. Okay. So there is a field called affected user, which is actually the lookup to user field, which is so here we provide the value, which is let's say if I'm a user, I'm getting an error, I will provide my value over here. As admin, we'll get the user who is actually getting the error. What is the type of component which is throwing an error? It could be a flow, Apex class, Apex trigger, batch Apex, LWC, Aura, or integration. Then what is the label of error? What is the severity? It is error, success, warning, and information. You could add more success warning. You could add fine, finer. Multiple values could be there. What is the title of an error? Like for example, when the short form of your error, it could be error while creating a contact record. Unknown error occurred while trying to create a contact record. Error content is a field which is going to hold the i- complete error, whatever the error is coming. Then there is a flow name. So whatever the flow is responsible for that error, flow developer name is basically the API name of your flow that you don't need to populate. There is a background process that does it. I have developed it. We will not talk about that. What is the type of flow? So we have just added all the type of flows which could be the possible values, and then some of the extra fields. If you want, you can keep it. If you don't want, not need it. Flow node is very important. I'll tell you what is this flow node. Then these are some of the like who is working on this error, the user whom this error is assigned, what is the status of the error, and what is the resolution comment. So this is just as I said, this is just a 1% of a logging mechanism process. So that's what we are using. So this object is there, error log. And what we are going to do is every time an error comes, we are going to log an error, right? So as we said, what we are going to do is, let me remove this. What we will do is we are going to create a record of our object called error log, right? We have not selected any object here. So we will select an object called error log and we'll provide all the values like what is the title and what is the content. Then what is the name of our flow? There is flow name. What is the flow node? This is very important. Flow type is also important. Flow node is also important. Then flow interview ID is important. Wanted to know which space. And then do we have something else? Affected user, yes. And component type. Component type. So these are some of the fields which we really, let me see if there is any which is missing. Severity is there, yes. So these are some of the fields which we really wanted to uh, provide the values to. We have got flow developer name. This is not needed. Yes, that is good. So these are all the values that you need to provide, right? Whatever the error title is, you would say an unknown error occurred while creating the contact or while creating the account record. And you can do that. What is error content? So we know that there is something called flow as a global variable, and there is a fault message inside that flow. Flow name is basically the name of your flow, which is actually throwing an error. So you just need to give the flow name. And now why we are taking the flow name? So anytime if I show you the existing logs, anytime there any error comes, we know that okay, this was the error. This is the flow where the actually error comes. This is the API name of our flow. And then flow node is something telling us which particular place the flow actually failed, right? This is the label of your flow node. This is the label of your element which is failing. In our case, if we talk about this element, which is CR01 create account record. So if you go to flow name, you'll say CR01 create account record. Now, as soon as you give this information to any admin will go open this flow, find this node, and check what could be the possible reason for getting the error or failing the error in this node in this particular element. And flow type is again going to be screen flow. Flow interview ID you will again get from the global variable called interview GUID. Affected user will be coming from global variable user.id. Component type is flow, and severity should be error. Right? Now this is what you have done. Assume you have done it for one place. Now this fault path is connecting to this. Let's say this fault path is also connecting to this. Okay. Now every single thing is here. You might wanted to have another maybe create record or maybe send email here, and then at the end you just have the assignment which we have seen. Now this is the one place. This is the repeated information that you're using at every place. This is the repeated information. So now comes when we need to use auto launch flows or sub flows. That is really important, right? When to use. We have seen what is the problem in general flows, but now we're talking about when to use. So first of all, if you have a repeated information, right? Let me first of all give it a background, solid background. Okay. Okay. So if you have repeated information means you are using the same element again and again, same kind of element again and again, or same kind of a screen again and again at different places. It is not about keeping this in a same flow. We have three, but there could be 300 flows which are creating a record, deleting a record, updating a record. Everyone will have a fault path, and everywhere you will have to do this. Now consider the amount of time that you are going to take to develop this at every places. Now if you have something you are putting in a different place and you just inject it, that's it. You give the necessary information, and that's it. You're done. You just need to use that flow, provide the necessary inputs, and you're done. Rest everything is being done by that flow. So that is what. If you have a repeated information, if you have a complex flow means, let me show you how the complex flow looks like. Okay. Complex flow plus Salesforce. I'll show you an image and you might have seen the flow something like this, or you might not have seen the flow something like this. If you have seen the flow, congratulations, you already know. If not, here is a complex flow which someone developed. Okay. Not sure what was the requirement when this flow was developed. But if you see, now, do you really think as an admin you are going to debug this flow and you will find out something meaningful out of this flow? There are hell number of screens, there are hell number of decision elements, create record, update record, some actions, subflows. So this is basically one of the example of complex flow. Now if you have complexity in your flow, you will again going to use auto launch flow or subflow. You will say, okay, I'm going to put 50 elements in my flow. If it is more than 50 element, I'm going to use another flow and then another flow, right? That is how you are going to arrange and develop the flow with the very simple way. Okay. So that is what we have got, complex flow. Third one is you wanted to basically increase the usability, increase the reusability. Basically, this is the repeated information and reusability is kind of same, right? So you really have to see, are you repeating the same thing at every flow? Is your flow getting complex and you are adding multiple elements? Do you want to increase the reusability? Reusability, like you wanted to use the same concept again, same flow at like same thing at multiple places in a same flow, or same thing at multiple flows. If you are getting these kind of things, and if you get answer, like if you get yes as an answer to any of these, you really have to think about, can I go ahead and use a subflow or an auto launch flow? Okay. Now, as we are talking about here auto launch flow, so let me give you the very basic thing about auto launch flow, which is auto launch flows or the flow which cannot run by themselves. Like you cannot use those flow anywhere in Salesforce. You can only use those flow inside another flow. An auto launch flow can be used inside another flow, but cannot directly run, and that cannot directly be used anywhere in Lightning experience. So if you have a screen flow, you can add that screen flow in your Lightning experience and start using it. But if you have an auto launch flow, you have to first refer that flow in another flow, which could be either your record triggered flow or your screen flow or your record orchestration flow or platform event flow. It could be any other flow or Lightning process builder which is now deprecated. You have to refer those, or you are referring those auto launch flows from Apex, from REST APIs. That is all you can do. Those cannot run directly. You have to invoke them. If you don't invoke, those will not work. Okay. So that is really important thing we need to keep in mind. Now let's go ahead and develop an auto launch flow. So we are already on flows. Good. So if you click on new flow this time, you will see there is something called auto launched flow no trigger. That is what I said, no trigger. It cannot trigger itself. And if you read the information, it says launches when invoked by Apex process. Apex is Apex class, processes is process builder, REST API, and more. This auto launch flows runs in the background. So we'll select this, click on create. Now auto launch flows cannot have any screens. This is also very important thing. Auto launch flow cannot have any screen. If you click on this flow and see there is no screen, you cannot use screens. So you might have a question, Amit. Okay, let's say that our flow is very huge and we wanted to have multiple, like we wanted to create one big flow with the help of multiple small flows. Like there is one flow which is referring something like this. There is one flow which is referring 3 or 4 flows, and that flow is ultimately, this is an screen flow. Okay, and you wanted to refer all these 3 flow, and one of the flow contains a screen. So how we'll do if auto launch flow cannot be used, right? So in that case, let's say this is an screen flow, this needed screens, and this also needed a screen, right? In that case, this is called as subflow. I'm sure you are aware about this. If not, then this is called subflow. And this is nothing, this is a type of, this is an screen flow itself. You can use this screen flow independently as well. Okay. So if you say that, okay, I wanted to use an screen inside another flow, you have to develop an screen flow, and that is called as subflow. And if you don't have any screen and you wanted to refer that inside another flow, that is called as auto launch flow. Okay. Now what we have to do is we have to create the record. So we will use create record, and that is going to be cr01 create log record. Okay. We have only one record. We are going to create the record of error log object, and we are going to have all the values here, like what is the title, what is the content, what is the component type, and what is the flow type, not flow version number, what is the flow type, what is the flow node, and then do we have flow name, introduce GUID, severity, and that's it. Now from where we will get all these information? So auto launch flows or even your screen flows actually can take the input from Apex, from processes, from Lightning Experience Builder, or from where they are being invoked, they can take the input. They have the ability to take the input. How? We will see. I'm sure you might be knowing, but this is a auto launch flow. So I'm going to say auto and say create log records. So I have saved this. Now from where we'll get this information? So this is an error title. So let's create a resource. Let's create a resource of type variable. I'm going to say where error title. And what is the data type? That is text. And this is where you are going to define what is the purpose of this flow. Do you want to take the input outside of the flow, or you want to give the input from give the output from the flow? In our case, we want to take the input. So we'll just take the input, check this checkbox. Error content, we are going to create multiple resources basically here now, where error content type is text, make sure it is available for input. Similarly for component type, basically component type is always going to be flow because we wanted to do this for flow only. Flow type, it could be anything. So for this, we are going to create a resource. We'll say where flow type, because it could be screen, auto launch, scheduled. Flow node, we definitely need. So we will say where, let's say where flow node. So you're getting it right. I just wanted to do a check. Are we getting it, or are we not getting it? Okay, there is a question from Divya. John, could you please let her know where they can get all the recordings?
I will share the YouTube channel link in the chat.
Okay, yeah. Please do that. I think that would be helpful for them.
Sure.
Severity, let's make it as error for now, but you can always keep this as well as keep this as variable as well. Okay, so we have just created the record. We're taking the input. We have not used it anywhere. Now let's have a default path. I'm not going to basically send an email over here, so I'll just use an assignment so that I can stop my error propagation here. So I will say dummy, sorry, stop fault path. And what I'll do is I'll say whatever error content is, that's it, done. Now, one thing that we forgot is in our, oh, what I did, okay, just a minute. Now it's back. I'm going to save it. Yeah, so what I did is I forgot to have an affected user, which is really important for us to know which user was affected, where user ID. Okay, text, taking an input, and done. Okay, so this is done for us. Our subflow is ready. We go ahead and activate it and done. Okay, our subflow is our auto launch flow is actually ready. I'm going to close it now. And then what we have to do is we have to refer that subflow here in our different fault paths, so that we can, whenever there is any error, we pass the information and uh, we are able to make the things as per our need. Okay, so Pawan, no, fault paths are not only available for DML operations, those are also available for any action that you take. That action could be sending an email, calling an Apex class, posting to the chatter, or using any standard actions that Lightning provides. So it's not only for DML. Now, in place of this fault path, we are going to use flow. So what we will do is now we'll click on plus and we'll call subflow here. And what is our subflow? That is auto create log records, which we just developed. And then you just, whatever you want to give the label, SF01, create log records. Now here you have to pass the values to all these variables to make sure that you are logging the error properly. So error content is basically nothing, flow dot fault message. Error title is again an unknown error occurred while setting up a count record. I'm just putting something, okay. Interview ID, again we are going to get from flow dot interview ID, interview GUID, flow name. Okay, let's click on done. And then again, if we edit it, it is going to open on the right so that we can copy the flow name. So I'm going to say flow name. Okay. What is flow node? That is going to be CR01 create account record. What is flow type? That is a screen flow. And what is the affected user? And that is flow dot user ID. Oh, sorry, not flow. It is user dot ID. So now this is one place where you have used the flow. You don't need to add a fault path here because your subflow is already handling the error and the fault path is not even available here. Similarly, you just call the fault path from, like you just call the subflows from all the places wherever it is needed and you are done. You really don't need to worry about what is there in the subflow. Definitely, if you are developing, you need to worry about. But if you are providing this subflow to someone else, it is going to be like very good for them. They really don't need to worry about the other things, right? So now you have got this subflow here. In future, if you really want to add something in this flow and that you really want to affect all these fault path, you just go ahead to the previous flow and add the things. That's it. And there is nothing that you need to, I would say, worry about, right? So if we go ahead, I think we need to provide the values to the create contact record because this is something which is going to be fail. So I'm going to say user.id, flow type is a screen flow, flow node is going to be CR02, not 302, create contact record. Flow name, I'm going to copy it. Interview GUID is error content flow dot fault message, and we will say error while creating contact record. Okay, so this is what we have, right? We have just created as a subflow. Now there could be multiple requirements. For example, you are trying to create a case record, and that case record can be created under account, can be created under opportunity, created under solution, created under contact. So if you wanted to create a case record from the various places, you cannot keep developing 4 or 5 or 6 different flows which takes the same input and you add it at various places. You'll just create one flow which takes the input and utilize that flow at various places and various flows, and you're done. And again, as we talked about complexity, as soon as the complexity increases, you are going to start developing the subflows and auto launch flows. Now, if you debug it, let's debug it, and we should be able to see some sort of error or something. Yeah, so I'm going to say salesforce.com +1 next. So account got created. You can see here on the right of your screen, account ID is populated. I'm not going to provide any value for contact so that we get the error. And you could see here, it says this is where S02 input screen. This is our screen. Let me make it big. Yeah. So S02 is our input screen. Okay. Then here, if you see, these are all the values that we had. We have not provided anything here. These are the values we did not provided. We clicked next. Okay. And now where is this? Okay. Yeah, we clicked next. Okay, we clicked next. Then it says create. We went to the create contact record, and the result was failed to create record. As soon as, because we were handling the errors, right? This was the error. It says error handled because of the fault path. And as soon as we handled the errors, we called the subflow, and then there was a create record, and the error was created with this ID, right? So if I copy this ID and get back to my any record, if I open and just replace the ID in the URL, okay, and you will see here, this is the log which was created today only, 3rd of February, 11:50 a.m. Okay, because this is the time which is happening, and you will see, right, whatever the title, the error, every single thing, few things are not populated yet, and there is a reason. After a minute those things will get populated, because there is a flow which runs behind the scene. Okay, now this is the one thing that, like, I created, I'm the owner, and affected user is myself. Now if you wanted to debug the flow as a different user, you could always do that. And if you don't know, what you have to do is go to setup and say process automation settings, and here there would be a setting for enabling. Okay, that says, setting says let admin debug flows as other users. Okay, it says let admins debug flows as other users. So just say debug it, that's it. This is what we need to use. We don't need to use anything else. We don't need to worry about anything. Go ahead and click on save. So we just saved it, and now if we go back, refresh our flow, and then again say let's debug as debug. We're trying to debug the flow. Okay, and this time it will say run flow as another user. So if you click on this checkbox, you will get an option to select which user you want to run this flow. So I want to run this flow as Harvey Kun. This is another user present in my org, and what it says, you don't have the level of necessary access to perform operation you requested. And yes, the reason is because this user actually doesn't have the access to run the flow. But if you have some user, not sure if I have, okay, Harvekun, Josephine Ray, let's see if this is the user which has the permission. No. So I need to find out if there are any users with Salesforce license who can actually run the flow. So there is one system admin, and I actually don't have any user. I'll try with this user to enable the flow. If I would be able to enable the flow, I'll show you. Otherwise, you can just go ahead and try it. It will work. Okay. So flow. Where is this flow? Run flows. It doesn't have the permission to run flow. And this user, just allow me. In the meantime, please put your questions in the chat, because that's the last thing that we are covering. So if you have any questions, please ask. I'm just preparing a permission set where we will give the run flows permission. That is the permission to uh, run the flow, and then we will test it. If works, that's fine. If not, that is also fine. So yeah, please, I think at least I'm expecting few questions. If not, then also fine. Any questions, guys? Looks like no one wants to ask any question. Good. That is also good. Okay, so I've enabled this permission set. I will try to debug again with another user, and that could be Josephine Ray. And yes, so now the user is able to uh, do the like the user is able to run the flow. Click on next. Okay, the record got created, and I again click on next, and we got the error. And we also got the error because the user don't have access to this object called error log, right? So this user also does not have access to object error log. If you're attempting to use a custom object, make sure this and this. I also have to give the permission to the object error log. Okay, so in the meantime, I'll take the questions, what all here. Okay, can we summarize the whole video? Wow, I will do that, no worries. So let's talk about auto launch flows. Auto launch flows are the flow which are actually being invoked by any other process. Process could be process builder, Apex class, or it could be uh, another flow. Auto launch flows cannot be invoked, like cannot run themselves. Like a screen flow and record triggered flows can run themselves based on whenever there is a need, but the auto launch flows has to be invoked by a process, either Apex class, flow builder, or any other REST services. If you have like if you wanted to make the simple like if you wanted to develop the complex flows in a simple way, start using the auto launch flows or the sub flows depending on whatever your need is. If you wanted to start increasing the reusability, if you if you are a developer, you might have already started using the utility classes or something like this. Similarly, in flow, you can start developing the utility flows like for error handling, for sending the emails, for uh, sending the custom notifications, for rich text areas. So you can start creating the utility flows, and those flows can be used inside another flows in order to increase the reusability as well as to save the time. So that was basically the overall summary of what auto launch flows is, how to use and when to use. Okay, now before I take another question, I'll again try to debug one last time. If it is working, then that is good. Otherwise, I will suggest go ahead, create another user, try to debug with that user, and you would be able to see the details. So this time it works. Very good. Now the reason I wanted to show you to debug as user, because when the actual users are using the flow, the affected user is actually going to come as that user. And this is the basically key thing for you to understand. You could go immediately check the permissions, profiles, roles, groups, queues, and see what is missing for this user. That is why I wanted to debug this as another user. Okay. And now if you go to the previous flow, not flow, previous record, you will see that the other information should be populated. If not, that's fine. Let me take another question now. Where is a question on Pawan? What's the difference between HTTP call and outbound message in flows? Um, Not related to session. Please, maybe we can connect over LinkedIn. You can definitely uh, connect me over LinkedIn and we'll discuss on that. And Pramod says how we call auto launch flow using Apex. You can always call. I'm not going to show you, but I will share a link. Okay, call flow from sales call flow from Salesforce Apex. If you Google it, then you will get it how you call. So there should be a Salesforce document which I'm looking for. If not, then I have to look into. I usually love Salesforce Stack Exchange, and here is not. Okay, launch a flow. I think this is also good. Help article. So you can always go and watch and Google it. You actually have to Google it. I have done it, but this is something which is Yes, this is what it is. You have to basically create a map if you wanted to pass the input to the parameters. And okay, I'll check it actually, because this is not clear, I'm sure, not clear to you. So I'll see, I'll maybe share a blog post or something related to that, but you can Google is always, there would be multiple blog posts which people already keep putting. So you might wanted to check this blog post and then you'll get it. Just go ahead and try it. That's it. You see here, these are all the details which they have put, right? So just go ahead and try it. You will see, either you will get the errors or you will able to make it work. Can you please explain again the application of using faults in flows? So Divya, this is if you are developing a code or if you are developing a flow, there is a possibility that your flow or your code is going to break at some point. So if you are a developer, what you do is you go ahead and use try catch block to handle the errors, to handle the exceptions, and fail the flow silently without telling the user. But if you are developing a flow, then you have to use this fault path so that the flow fails silently without telling the user that there was an error, or fail the flow and display only the information which is relevant to the user, not everything. Now let me delete this fault path. Um, delete this fault path, which is for create contact record. And if I debug this now, okay, let me debug. So what you will see is you will see something irrelevant, which is not needed at all. Okay. So if you go ahead and click on next, you see something like this. And you will never want to show this information to your user that this is something happened. This is unpleasant experience to any user, and to the user who is actually don't know what is happening behind the scene. So that is the use of fault path, and you definitely need to handle a flow with the fault path. If you're not handling, then you'll definitely be in trouble at some day. So it says while solving flow, I could find email comma separated field. I wanted to know why this has happened. I really don't know what you're asking, Divya. If you could elaborate more on like why this has happened. This is something Salesforce knows why this has happened. Okay, how to know the error fields available in flow exception? Is the error log table is out of box or custom? I think you have joined the session very late. So this error log table is a custom. There is nothing called standard error log. Okay, so you have to create your own table. Second thing, the fields that you will get itself in the exception. Flow.fault message is going to give you every single thing whatever you needed to identify the problem. So that is what it has. So flow.for, if you see here in the log, it clearly says that field custom validation exception contact first name and account cannot be blank, because this error is coming from a validation rule. If you have something called standard validation like last name which is required field on contacts, you will see required field missing and it will tell you the API name of that field as well. So you will have to use flow.fault message to get the complete error and you're good. So that's it from my side, John. Over to you.
Thank you, Amit sir. Thanks for the great session. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Bye.